out there. These are wonderful conversations.
I hope.
And
I hope so.
no, yeah, I think it will be. I think it'll be a great conversation. And just to let everybody know, first of all, my friend Dave here, he is one person I have special affection for because not only does he help me, does he support me in so many different ways, but also just intellectually. He's a very smart person, very giving person, does a lot for his community. So I just want to applaud you right off the bat before we even get started. Okay.
Well, thank you for saying those things. Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely,
I
man.
hope to be judged.
So
I hope to be judged after the fact. Yeah.
Mm. So look, I want to make sure we're on the right footing because I have a feeling that we probably agree on more things than we don't. But just to
Okay.
make sure, and just for the audience sake too. So dualism, how do you understand dualism versus non-dualism? How do you understand these two concepts?
Well, at the basic level, I have to always agree with the basic dictionary definition. Dualism means two. So we're talking about two things that are related, something that may be opposite or not, but two things. And
Hmm.
non-dualism or a monism is one thing. Non-dualism could also be looked at as dualism that's very, very close. But in any event, I first have to agree with the dictionary before I go on to a philosophical definition. In
Hmm.
a philosophical stance, I see a dualism in terms of both one's perception of reality and their need for food, hunger, as a combination of things. And then I also see that I can ask the person I'm discussing it with if they have the same qualities. That's it.
So would it be fair to say that dualism is two realities?
Well, how I don't understand. How can it be two realities?
Yeah, well, that's what when you look at the dictionary definition. So like you were explaining, you've got the subjective reality, like
Yeah.
hunger, but then you've got this other reality. It's the objective reality. Um, so are you claiming that that this is the case? Would you
Well,
say?
I'm saying the subjective reality is what you experience inside your head, or what I experience
Hmm.
inside my head, and
Hmm.
hunger is something that is objective because I get feedback. When I eat, I'm no longer hungry. I actually get feedback. So the term intersubjective is sometimes used, but I find that a little dodgy. So I prefer objective when I consider things that I get real feedback from experimentally, when I actually test something, when I get that information back, or I have documentation that supports the process that I have already had, or I can show it in
So
nature. I can show an experiment. That's objective.
so so objective is outside of your subjective reality. It's in
Yes,
other
it has
words,
a feedback. Yeah.
you know the objective reality because you can get out of your subjective reality and you enter into this objective reality.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I have to agree with that.
So
Yeah.
how okay. So help me understand how that's done. How do you get out of your subjective reality to get out of your mind, so to speak, or out of your subjective experience? How do you get out of that subjective experience in order to observe objectively anything? And what is it that
Well,
you then who would the observer be if you're not in your subjective mind?
I'm always in my subjective mind, but I can call something objective if I can predict it, if I have feedback from it, if I can experiment with it, if I can, in fact, uh, use it for other purposes that other people can see and I can gain a consensus with. The point is that I'm getting all this
Ah,
feedback through my world, through my subjective interface, but I can label it objective because I get the feedback.
so this labeling, this categorization exists in your mind or outside of your mind?
In both, my mind takes note
In
of
both.
what I believe to be outside of it.
So a category, in other words. In other words, even the categories are in your mind, though, right?
Well, I guess to some extent that I'm recognizing it. I mean, the executive function of my brain is definitely
Hmm.
recognizing something. But if I can agree with you on quantity and quality and things like that, Immanuel Kant stuff, his whole idea of categorical imperatives show something that I can then label objective
Okay.
because we agree.
So would you
Yes.
say, yeah, so let's take hunger for example. So the body and its sensations of hunger. These expressions, are they separate things or the same thing?
The feeling of hunger, you're saying?
Yeah, is the body and its sensations, like the things that you feel in your stomach, for example, when you're hungry, like you get a headache, dizzy, low
Yeah.
blood sugar,
Yeah.
all of that stuff, you feel that. You have a subjective experience of hunger, as you described, right?
I have
Does
an exec.
is
My executive mind sees something that my body is feeding back into. Yes.
Yeah, so the body and the sensations are expressions of they're not separate things. You just said they're the same thing, right?
Um, I'm saying my executive recognition of something the body is physically telling me are two things. My body is telling me something,
Mhm.
and my executive recognition of it is something else. The
Mhm. Mhm.
uh,
I
so
agree.
commonly said, people will eventually try to boil that down to a subjective world. That's totally subjective. So you subjective and intersubjective. But those intersubjective things I label as objective.
Mhm. So I guess all you're really saying is that there's an objective category that you've labeled as objective and one as subjective, both of whom arise within your experience because it's the only interface you have to any quote unquote outside world, right?
Let's see. That's a very tricky statement. You've put it out there. The way you've put that, very tricky. Um, and it's full of kind of catches here. So I would have to say it again. Please, please
Okay.
say it
Yeah.
again.
So, yeah, sure, sure, sure. So I was just going to say, I was just saying that this objective category and subjective category exists within your executive functioning mind. That's your interface to the world, this outside world. That's what you're saying. That there's this outside world, and then there's this internal world. And the external world appears within your subjective mind as an objective category within your subjective mind.
I'd have to agree. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, I would say I would just agree with you 100%. So I think there may be just a very subtle misunderstanding, right? Is my assessment here. I also believe in objective and subjective categories, right? But I only know these to be those categories within that same reality, which is like you said, there's only one reality. And the reality I know primarily is going to be through my mind, the qualia, the sensations, even even the objective observation of what's going on in my digestive system, right? is an appearance within my mind. It's what I'm observing. And now somebody could say, but how do you explain them the fact that other people also can see these things and they're not in your mind? Like your experience is not my experience and vice versa, right? So
Yes, but we can
we
quantitate them. We can
right,
categorize
and
them.
we can
Yeah.
right, we can measure it and we can all come to an agreement. And I would say that this is what you call consensus reality as a
Yeah.
category,
Yes, I
consensus
agree.
reality. But this in
Yeah.
this consensus reality sort of intersects the universe and all of our intersubjective experiences, right?
Yes, it does.
Right. So I would agree with you 100%. That's exactly what I mean by non-dualism. That's all I really mean by it. That's it.
So,
It's not even that
so what you're
complicated. So,
so what you're
uh,
saying is, so let me
so
let
when
me
so when you
let me
think
repeat
about,
to you.
mhm,
Let me see if I can rephrase so I can show that I understand what you're saying. You're saying the non-dualism is the fact that my executive function sees a subjective world, a intersubjective world that has these categories in it, one of which is labeled objective, another is labeled subjective, another which may be labeled intersubjective, but all of these things are qualia within that sphere of my mind. And the reinforcement I get from the outside
mhm,
world uh, allows may allow me to continue to exist, so that I get
mhm,
feedback that emphasizes that point. Is that about right?
right. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So, like, hunger is not inconsistent with non-dualism because sensations of the body are experiences arising with the same awareness that experiences the thoughts, emotion, and perceptions. That's all that is.
Yes. Until you find that you have survived because you've eaten. If you um, if you have feedback because you were hungry, and if you're hungry, it's subjective. When you eat, will it sustain you? That's still subjective. You see that it does sustain you, then it becomes objective, right? So I accumulate experiences into a reference that I can call objective, a datum I can call objective, because I have a plethora of experiences that all have the same reactions, actions, and reactions. Basically, hunger and then satisfaction of hunger. Okay, so um,
If if we don't survive, if we didn't survive, how would we know we didn't survive?
I don't know. That's beyond me. I hope I have dreams of what that might be, um, but I don't really know.
Okay.
I don't know if anything
So, like,
survives.
the way I, the way I understand like intersubjectivity is that's the appearance of multiple perspectives within one underlying reality. It's not evidence
That
of
I
multiple independent realities. It's just
well,
one, right?
what's reality? Is reality
Well,
what I
reality
only
is,
perceive? Yeah.
are you speaking ontologically or epistemically?
Ontologically is the study of knowledge, right? Okay.
Because those are two different things you could be asking.
Okay. So well, let's clear up
I'm
what those
sorry.
two things are. Let's make it simple language. Okay. So I don't have. Okay. Because I normally go back and I look these terms up and make sure I'm with them. Ontological, I understand, is the study of knowledge. Is that about right?
No, no.
Okay. What is it?
Ontology is what is like what fundamentally is the case. Epistemically is
Okay.
just how you know things, like how you
Okay.
know it.
So
So I could say, yeah, go ahead.
okay. So if so, I would have to say that ontologically, uh, the things that I know are those things that are in my mind. Um, how do I know then? It's because I'm getting information from several sources, and I'm processing that information and reprocessing it to find out if I have an event. Now, what is reality?
Reality is ontology, and it's also epistemic as well. So depending on what we mean, that's why I mean to break down these terms. So if I were to say my hunger is real, like if we say my hunger is real, what is hunger? Hunger is that feeling of lack of food or whatever, right?
Yeah,
I know that I'm hungry. How do I know I'm hungry? I know it epistemically because I experience it firsthand. Ontologically, what is hunger? I don't
it's
know
the
because I
low
don't
blood
have
sugar.
access. The just to let you know, my approach to ontology is always to say I don't know. I am
Right,
agnostic about ontology, and so is science. By the way, science studies behaviors, and it studies predictions and what it can predict, and over, and repeatability and things of that nature. Right?
right.
That says nothing about the ontology. That same prediction, that same thing could be consistent under an ontology of God. It could be consistent with an ontology of the material world only. It could be true possibly on idealism or panpsychism or all these different isms. Um, the ontology fits. So the datum here of the natural world fits either ontology. So there's this underdetermination problem. This is called the problem of underdetermination. And it's why science does not engage in ontology. It can only talk about what's useful and functional in the world. Like they don't really care about ontology. That's for the philosophers to chew on. So when you say you know something ontologically, I would have to ask you, how do you know it? How do you get out of your epistemic loop to know what ontology is?
I'm still confused. What is ontology again?
Okay, so ontology is what something is. Like what is physical? What is mental? Like what what are these things? What are they really? Like we can talk about, like if you were to ask a scientist, what is the physical? And they'll go and tell you about mass and spin and what they do and
Yeah.
things that they behave. That's not answering the question, though. That's only telling you what these appearances, how they behave within our intersubjective appearances, right?
No,
So
I
I'm
disagree.
very agnostic as well. Okay, go ahead and make
Well,
your case. I'd really love to learn that.
okay, because my intersubjective categorization says I have objective results, and I can say that my physical table, this conversation, they physically exist. So I can say that they exist, and it doesn't matter for my perception. They simply exist outside of me.
How do you know
That's
that?
what I have because I get feedback.
I mean, but your feedback is always, you're always stuck inside your mind, though. As you said, you're never outside of your mind. So this feedback, even the feedback itself, happens inside your experience, right? Though, right? Or no?
It happens, and then I have an experience of it.
Right.
There's
I
two
understand
things
what you're
happening
saying.
here.
I'm asking, how do you? Right. So how do you know that?
How do I know that? Because I can repeat it. I get consensus with it within myself and within a group of other people. So
And
I
these other
have,
people, are they observers?
yes, everyone
Okay.
observes
And
hunger.
observation, right? And observation happens inside of what? Minds or outside of minds?
The observation happens within the mind of something outside the mind.
Right. I understand the claim. What I'm trying to get to is, how do we know that part? How do we know it's happening outside of your mind? Or is that just your assumption? That seems to be the way it's experienced. I agree. It seems like it's happening outside, in this outside world. But the only thing we really know for certain is the experience of this category. But I guess what I'm asking is, how did you determine that this outside world actually exists as an outside world? Because it seems
because I
like you're
get the
just making
feedback.
a
I
right,
hear
but
what you're saying, kind of, and I can't agree that it isn't outside my mind. I have to say that it is both. So if it actually is both, then I can continue to exist. Now I can say that I've evolved my over humanity. Life has evolved. All life has evolved with the ability to recognize that it has taken enough nutrients in, enough sustenance to make it to the next step in their life. Okay, and simply because of that, I can say that I can observe and have a consensus with everyone else that I get hungry, and I can be assured of that. I have complete confidence in that. I mean, why wouldn't I?
but do you realize that you realize that you smuggled in an assumption, though, that you're not addressing?
Which
Do you
was
know
the
what that
assumption?
assumption is?
No, what's the assumption?
Yeah. So if you're treating feedback as an outside reality separate from mind, then this is
Yeah.
always going to be based on a philosophical assumption. It's not something that can be proven independently of a worldview. It's a model we adopt to explain consistency and predictability. So, this ontology. So, like for example, whether you touch a hot stove, you hear a voice, see a tree, you are receiving feedback from the world. So you
Yes.
only encounter sensations, perceptions, thoughts, feelings. All of this stuff happens in your mind. So these arise in consciousness. You never experience an external world itself. You experience representations. Because of this saying, feedback comes from an external world outside my mind, is just a metaphysical assumption. And that's kind of established in philosophy of mind. So
Okay.
this is
Why is that
something, this
important?
is even in the philosophy of science. It's very
Okay. So why is
important
that?
because it points to non-dualism. It's pointing to where we agree. It's pointing, you're agreeing with that, right?
I am,
I
but
just
I
want to
am
make sure you
not.
agree
I
before I
but I am agreeing with it. Yes, I am agreeing with it, but I am steadfast on the notion that there's two things we're dealing with. There's the outside world, and there's what's in my mind. My mind is. I see what's in my mind. I have to believe the outside world is there because I have succeeded in
Mhm.
existing.
Right, right. Absolutely.
I have
I'd agree.
I have accumulated
So,
experiences that show me that I have existed and am existing.
right, right, exactly. I totally, we've agreed on that. So everyone, I think, would agree that feedback appears consistent. Like if you
Yes,
skip eating, you feel hungry. If you walk into traffic, you're going to get hit.
right.
If you miscalculate a jump, you're going to fall, right? So the
Yes,
feedback loop that you're referring to is undeniable as a pattern in your experience. I think that
yes.
the what we're trying to nail down is whether we really disagree about what grounds that pattern. So, like dualism or materialism makes this assumption that the world is actually outside of the mind and it causes the experience. Non-dualism would say that the world is a structured pattern within the mind, not outside of it. There's an assumption on both cases, but
So,
which
so in
assumption do you go
non-dualism,
with? Are you
I go with the dualism.
right?
The yeah, the non-dualism assumes that everything's in the mind. So why isn't it self-generating to the point where I don't need to eat anymore?
Why should it? I don't understand.
Well, if it's all in my mind, if I've created it from my mind, if I have taken that kind of point of view, um, let's say David Hume's kind of point of view, then uh, why do I have to eat again? Why do I ever have to eat
Because
again?
you- you're talking about solipsism. Yeah, that solipsism is a monism, but it's not
Yeah,
the kind. It's not a dual sort of monism. So the non-dual or idealistic idea is that the world that we know epistemically, like how we know things, are structured patterns within mind, not outside of it. So you don't have to, for example, you've heard of Descartes, I think, therefore I am. I would
certainly.
say, like, I experience, therefore I know I exist. So it's not something you have to get to through a syllogism or anything like that. It's not an assumption, it's not a presupposition. It's firsthand experiential knowledge. Like,
Yeah.
if you're hungry, you don't have to argue the point. You don't have to deduct that you're hungry. You don't have to go through some sort of thought process to get to that realization. It's immediate. It arises in consciousness. That's what I mean by arising. So on non-dualism, these sort of effects, these sort of appearances, these sort of categorizations all arise in consciousness, right? Now,
No.
that's not an assumption. That's not an assumption. Materialism, however, is an assumption because it's talking about a world outside of our mind, outside of our epistemology. It's just saying these things that I see in my mind exist outside, and these outside things will determine why I experience them. So it's very circular if you think about it. Logically, it's very circular. You're looking
Okay,
out.
so
You're looking. It's like saying you know, you're watching a movie and you're looking at a brain generator inside the science fiction movie and saying, oh, that brain generator inside that movie is what's creating this movie. That doesn't make sense. That's an assumption. And that's the same sort of assumption that's made on materialism. It's basically a metaphysic.
okay, so I can agree with that, sure. And so I can say that from my point of view, there are two worlds. There's the world I perceive, and then there's the physical world outside of what I perceive.
That's your assumption, right?
That's my assumption. Yeah. Well, it's also my proof.
Assumption.
I,
Okay,
ca- I
okay, okay.
okay. I can say that I have evidence. I have a string of
Okay,
evidence.
so if I was in a dream, if I was a dreamer, I had a dream last night that when I picked up this rock, this giant mountain, I picked it up over my head and I threw it off this cliff and it hit the ground. Is that proof of that there was this outside rock? Because I perceived it as an outside rock in my dream.
Yeah, but you don't have feedback.
Sure, I
You don't
do.
have feedback.
When
What's the
I
feedback?
observed the crash of the rock, I- well, I observed the crash of the rock. I observed the damage that was made in my dream. All of that stuff happened within the dream.
Yeah, within the dream. But you have no proof from the outside world that you are continuing to exist, that it actually works. You have nothing to share with anyone else. You have nothing to build a consensus with other people with. You have
When I
no
was in my
evidence.
dream, I did.
Yeah, I mean, in a dream, sure you did.
But
But
you're missing
that's
the
valid, and that's
right. But
valid
you're
within your dream.
right.
Within the
That's as far as I'm trying to take this. It's a actual thing. So I just want you to deal on that level of conception. I mean, we both agree it's just a dream. We both agree it's not real. It was
right,
just a dream, right? We both agree
right.
with that. The point that I'm making is that just as in a dream, you can see feedback even within your mentality of that dream. That doesn't prove that it's not a dream. Just like today, we live in this world, we can't prove that solid with the hard problem. Um, we could be a brain in a vat. There's a lot of things about ontology we don't know. We could be in the mind of God. There's a lot of assumptions we can make. The only thing we know is that we're having an experience of this feedback. And it works for us. There's nothing wrong with it. We all find most of our meaning and everything else comes from this sort of dualistic feedback loop. I agree with you 100%. That's why I'm also a dualist to a certain extent. I'm both. But both of those things, those categories exist within that same reality of experience. And so that's where the non-dualism is what it's talking about.
I see what you're getting at. I understand what you're getting at, I think. And what you're telling me is that you're equating the dream with having had a meal or having had several meals over several years, is what I hear you're saying to me. But the need to eat, the
Yeah,
hunger
it doesn't
persists.
say anything about ontology.
Yeah, but the need to eat persists day after day, week after week, year after year. But the dream and its uh, feedback within the dream does not.
I understand that that's not the level of conceptual, that's not the level I'm trying to address. The only level I was trying to address with that is the idea that in the mental world, and the only reason I picked dream is because we both agree the dream doesn't represent true ontology. We both
Right.
can agree with that. That
Yes.
the giant stone that I threw off the mountain doesn't really exist ontologically. We both agree to that. That's the only reason I bring up dream. But
Okay.
the level of conceptual argument that I'm making is that just as we can't prove based on feedback within the dream, we can't prove feedback within this sort of mental experience, this consent, what they call it, consensus reality. Like dreams are a different kind of reality. It's a very, it's loose. You can do a lot of things like pick up mountains and throw them off, pick up stones and throw them off mountains and stuff. But in this reality, we have tight rules, we have tight restrictions. Obviously, we live, we die, and all this kind of stuff. The feedback
Yes.
has a lot of, and I agree with it, has a lot of consequences. But what I'm getting at is it's still mental. You've already agreed that everything we observe, even the categories, exist primarily, first of all, in our personal subjective experience. And that goes
No.
along with everybody
No. You
else
said
who is also
primarily.
engaged in it. You don't
You
think
used the
so?
word primarily. I can't
Yeah,
agree with that because of
primarily
the word
knowing.
primarily. No, because I can say that I can
So
say that
how
the
was
physical world primarily exists. I can, as a materialist in this conversation, I can say the materialism exists, and the primary thing is the material, and my subjective understanding that those things within my mind are secondary.
okay? Okay, so I would just like you to explain how you know that epistemically. How do you know that there's this outside world outside of your appearance, outside of your mind?
My history, the history,
I
I
mean,
can
but that's
recall many situations
what
I
you
haven't experienced much time.
but your recalling comes from your mind, right?
No, I can't remember anything that comes from my book or a my what do they call it? When somebody has a keeps notes in a diary, comes from my diary. Okay, I'll say my memories come from my diary.
Um, but you have to read your diary, right?
Yeah,
And your diary is a book, right? That you can see, you can touch it, you can feel it,
yeah,
you know it's a book that way,
yeah,
right? All of that
yeah.
happens where? In your mind or outside of your mind?
I believe it's happening actually outside my mind. I believe the diary
You
actually
believe it.
exists. I believe I'm touching it. I believe I'm reading it.
Right. I get that. I understand you believe that. But what I'm saying is, how do you justify your belief outside of your mind?
I don't understand why a justification is uh, required here. I don't understand why it is a question here. Because,
Because you're making a claim. It's because of your claim, not mine.
okay, your claim is that it all exists within my mind. And I'm saying, yeah, I have a replica in my mind of the
No,
outside world.
well, that's what I know. But I'm asking, well, so I
I have
know
both a replica and I do not have a
experientially
replica.
everything I experience happens.
When I have a
So
replica, I call it
so
real.
just to
When
be
I don't have a
clear,
replica, I
what
call it
I'm saying,
subjective. Yeah.
right? So just to be clear, I'm not really claiming anything. I know for 100% absolute certain that everything I experience happens in my mind as an experience. That's the only thing I'm
Sure.
saying. But what you're saying is you're going beyond that. You're saying that actually, no, there's this outside world that I'm blocked off from because I'm a subject. And I'm assuming, I believe, like you said, that this thing superimposes or supervenes on my mental life, this
Well,
outside
I,
world.
I'm saying I have both. I have the dream too, which I do not have replication for or replicated information from the outside world. I have both the subjective, truly it's only in my mind and it's purely in my mind kind of thing, the dream, and I have replicated information from the outside world and experiences that have sustained me, that give me the materialism. So I have both the materialism and the idealism because
Okay.
I see them as two
So
categories, two separate categories.
I get that. I understand. I'm just asking, how do you know? And you say feedback, but we just went over. Now, do you not agree with me that feedback happens within your experience or not?
Feedback is a replication of something that happens in my experience. It's a replication of information I'm getting. I'm taking that information and synthesizing it. So it's not exclusively in my experience. I can't call it exclusive, except for the dream. The dream is definitely
Uh-oh. Did
true.
we get cut off?
Are you there? Hello? Hello?
You still
Hello?
there?
I think I'm here. Hello? Hello? Testing, 1, 2, 3. I hear you.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
So yeah, I think we're breaking up. Something on my end is really messed up. By the way, hopefully I will have this situation fixed soon with my computer.
Okay, I wanna
Um,
call.
because on my
Okay,
end I'm just getting a huge lag. Go ahead. Okay. He's gonna go out and come back in. Yeah, I wasn't hearing Dave very well. All right, here he comes.
okay. Do you hear me?
Okay, Dave, let's see if the connection might be better.
Testing. Hello, hello. Do you hear me? Do you hear me?
Hello. Yes.
You do hear me. Good. Excellent.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I have replicated. You have replicated information that I have talked to you.
Mm-hmm.
So you do agree that your mind now has a representation of me talking to you.
Correct.
So that is a separate category from the dream. It does not have representation.
Uh,
Hello?
uh within the only within the dream.
Well, wait a second. After I wake up, if
Let me
remember the dream.
let me come back in and go out and come back in. Hold on.
Okay, okay, okay. And it is.
Okay, I'm back. Turn my camera off. Maybe that'll help with the connection. Okay.
I hope. Yeah.
All right, let's pick up where we left off. So I think you were making a statement. If you can remember, go ahead and restate it, and I think we'll be better off now.
What I'm getting at is that I have replication under one category of memories and or thoughts, and I have no replication under the other set. And over time, one of the sets of replication keeps growing, and on the other, it dims or fades away.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yes,
Okay.
my
So
mind's eye
what
sees
is
everything subjectively,
what does
but I
that
assume that it's
imply to you?
outside. It implies two worlds, a subjective and an objective.
Okay. Okay. I agree with those categories, but I wouldn't call them two different realities, though. I'd call them one reality.
Why?
But I could agree they're two worlds, so to speak. I think linguistically we could say they're two worlds. I'd agree. Like there's a world of subjectivity, a world of objectivity, um, that is very functional and useful. Um, but to actually take it too serious, to actually say that the objects that this other world we're talking about are separate from our experience is an assumption. That's all I'm saying. It's an assumption. Now it's an intuitive assumption, very intuitive. I'll give you that. But actually, it sort of has problems though.
Like what? What kind of problems?
But well, for one thing, we know what a subjective experience is ontologically. We don't know what these assumptions are ontologically. Those are assumptions. So one is an assumption, one isn't. So that's the problem, number one.
What are the assumptions again? Let's test the assumptions.
So yeah, so you don't have to assume that you exist. You know you exist, right?
Right?
But
And I know I
if we're
continue
really
to
being
exist.
honest,
I
right?
have existed.
But people, there's examples of this reality that don't match up. And so what we call objective reality is never what we assume it is. For example, um, a snake sees in what um, he sees in what that special kind of sight. What is it? Where
Thermal?
you look at heat. What is it called?
Yeah,
I
thermal.
don't know. You're
Thermal.
what's that?
Thermal.
Oh, yeah,
Thermal.
thermal. Yeah, and right in whales they right thermal, and then bats or say whales, for example, they experience the
Acoustic.
world through echolocation.
Yeah, acoustical.
There are human beings with synesthesia who yeah, there's people with synesthesia, human beings. They experience the world as colors or sounds, or they mix up the sounds with the colors. They don't experience the world the same way we do. So to say who is actually seeing the world objectively correct is an assumption. So we could say, well, the normal way of perceiving isn't like the whale or the bat or the dog or the cat or the synesthesia person. It's the way I see it. The way I see it is the right way to see it. That's a huge assumption, though. Even on a normal level, you could say, well, most people see the world not as echolocation. But
Okay.
all you need is one example of someone who truly sees the world differently than you can disprove and throw into question the entire notion of an objective world. Because when something's objective, it's absolutely one thing we can all understand that is the reality. This is how it's detailed. This is the way it is. We can't really do that with this quote unquote outside world because
We can with
it's
hunger.
experienced subjectively by really. I
Yeah, with
mean,
hunger we can. Everybody has
some
to
people
eat.
don't feel hungry.
Everyone has to eat. Anyone who doesn't eat
That
eventually
doesn't
fails to exist.
Okay, so how is that a defeater?
It it weeds out the population. It's natural selection, actually. It's a natural selection mechanism.
No, no, no,
Those
no.
who
I mean,
perceive
how
the
does
world
that
correctly
defeat
exist
how does that how does that
because of,
defeat um how does that defeat non-dualism?
well, it is because we have the reflection in one category and we have the subjective in the other category, and the reflection in the objective category proves itself out
Oh,
because yeah,
so you're saying, oh, now I get it. You may be right. So you're saying the fact that we have two categories proves non-dualism can't be true because it's two,
right,
right?
right, yeah.
Well, this is the fallacy that I'm pointing out, though. This is the fallacy. This is what I wanted to get to. These two categories exist in one reality or two.
Uh, First of all, I don't know what reality is. We haven't discussed what
And
reality is first. Okay, so I would really like to
okay,
pin
let's
down
talk
that
about
word before
experience.
I.
Let's
Okay,
stay away. Yeah, let's stay away from reality. Let's talk about experience. That's really what we're talking about. These
yeah,
categories, they exist in do they are they experienced in your mind or outside your mind? And if they're experienced outside your mind, how do you know that they're experienced by you outside of your own experience?
the objective category
That's what
has
I'm getting at.
correlations that I can repeat. The objective category has things
Okay,
that I
it,
can
it
repeat.
seems like so what I'm seeing is that there's a conceptual gap here. There's a loop that we're stuck in. You're
Yeah,
still not seeing that you're still not seeing that the outside world appears in your experience. You think that the world appears outside and how certain are you? Let's maybe put a number on it if we can. How certain are you that an outside world exists objectively outside of your mind? How sure are you of that?
100%. Absolutely.
100%. You couldn't be wrong
100%.
about that.
I can't be wrong about that. No, not
Okay,
with regards to food, to hunger.
that's not scientific, right?
Yeah, I understand the notion of falsification, but in this discussion, I want to say 100%. There are many things that I do consider objective, which are not 100%. But the notion of objective itself, that I do get hungry, and that is a common factor between all living things, um, is 100%. Yeah, that and
Well,
science does
what
support that,
about
or physics does.
okay. So science
Physics
supports
certainly does.
ontology. Can you cite anything there?
Everything's energy.
Okay, show me that. Show me how.
Okay. All
What
the
is
forms of
energy?
energy. Energy is the concentration of potential that fades away over time in different categories. And there are many forms of energy. Um, that potential, that potential to do work, or that potential to do heat, or that potential to do several things, are is something that fades over time, and it is a value within the universe that we have, for convenience, uh, connected to what we call the Big Bang as a form of nuclear energy that we see from the sun. It's also nuclear energy, the heat from the sun, and my digestive system, which is hunger, where I'm going back to, chemical energy. I see all these things in the universe as a form of energy. Einstein's E equals mc squared equation, for example, shows that everything is energy. It's either energy or mass, but mass is energy. So again, it goes back to energy.
But what is energy?
Energy
But
is the
what
potential
is
to do
energy?
work,
You're
and
telling me what it does, but that's
well,
what
it's
it
a
does.
potential.
But what is it?
It's, it is the potential to
What
do
is a
work.
potential?
Hmm, interesting
Capacity to do
question.
work, create change, produce outcomes. I
Yeah,
understand what you're saying. Potential means like the capacity to do work. Okay.
right.
Um, that's what it can do. Okay, but what
Yeah,
is that? What is it?
and not listing the forms of energy. Yes, how to not list the forms of energy or examples of it, and say what it is outside of that. Um, it is the degree of entanglement is one consideration. It's also Eddington's arrow of time. It is uh, it is the motion of time and the amount of entanglement that cannot be undone. Where entanglement represents the use of energy over time, I guess. Yeah. How do you answer? What is the potential of energy? What does that really mean? Is there a
Right, like
deeper meaning to that?
right. I'm
And
asking what is it, not what like what
what?
you understand the point is pretty clear. You're never going to tell me what it is.
Yeah,
You're never going to do that.
yeah,
You're
I can see
never going to
that
do
because
that. You're only going to tell me you're only ever going to tell me a description of behavior or a system of dynamics. It only becomes a statement about some kind of framework
that's
that
true.
it's like a reification. It's like it reifies potential into some statement of foundational element of what
That's
we call
true.
reality or physics or whatever. But you're not telling me what it is. And see, this is what I'm getting at. We know what consciousness is. We know what experience is because it's first hand. It's the first thing we build anything on. All of these descriptions rely on being conscious first. That's the stage on which these linguistic dances do their moves upon, right?
Well, I can
So
then
that's what
say,
non-duality is. It's just saying,
based on what you just said, I can say that energy is the satisfaction of hunger.
say that again.
Energy is the satisfaction of hunger.
Okay,
Ener-
but again,
Energy is simply,
you're pointing to an experience.
yeah, it is.
Hunger
Since
is
we
an
know what an
experience.
experience is, yeah, and you said we know what an experience is. So, based on that fact,
Firsthand.
I can say energy is the experience is the satisfaction of hunger, is the experience of satisfaction of hunger.
Whoa. So it's so you're coming around. So you're saying energy is an experience. That's the first three words you said. The
Yes,
first four
no,
words
that's
that
how
you
I.
said
Oh
was
no, that's a
energy
description
is
too.
an experience.
I sure did say
Right.
that.
You
and
said
it is our,
energy
but it's our.
is an experience. You see what I'm saying? You see the problem? We get into this loop. This is called the epistemic loop. It's not your fault. It's not your problem. It's no one's fault, but it's just the nature of epistemology. And
Yes,
and
but
that's
I
what I'm
get
saying.
time.
All you
I have time,
Mhm.
and I can do it many times, and I have that reflection coming back in at me, so I can continually say time after time that my experience is the that energy is the satisfaction of hunger. And by saying that, I can build up an objective reference to what I generally call energy.
Okay, I agree. So what does that do? Because it
It'll
happens a lot.
eventually,
You experience it consistently many times. Okay. How does that move the needle in one way or the other?
I have two big categories right in my head. One of my categories in my head I call objective, and it shows
Hmm.
reflections of what I believe to be in the outside world. The other one is subjective,
Hmm.
and it is information that I can only show is contained within my mind. Right? Is that
Hmm.
where I'm? What,
Yep.
is that, so if that's true, then I have both a subjective and an objective reality that, or objective and subjective uh, understanding of the world around me. I won't say reality yet because that's a bad word. That's a loaded word. So let's but I have a two category understanding of my world and of my own and of my own thoughts. Is that fair?
Lou Lou said something ingenious right here that gets to the point that I'm making. Perceptions are just a subjective reflection of a non-dualistic reality. Amen. Our perceptions are not a separate existence. We are non-dualistic beings with perception. Perceptions are not separate from us. Exactly. That's what I'm getting at, is that we can never separate our categories out from ourselves mentally, because our world is just mental. That's just the sad fact of the matter. We're stuck in a mental reality. These
Well, what's
categories
reality?
only exist. Well, reality, I'm talking about the epistemic reality, the one we know.
Well, we don't know a reality. I know a reality in my head, and you know a
Sure you do.
reality in your head. And this podcast is a reality of its own. So there's three realities I see.
Yeah, this is going to break down into language. So let me try at it. So everybody talks about reality. Um, the theory of evolution is just a reality. You would agree, right?
I don't know. No, I only see. No, I see reality
You don't
as.
know. Okay.
No, I don't know.
Okay.
I I see my
Energy is
reality
energy
as a
reality.
reflection of what I see. Is energy reality?
You had
No,
told me
energy is
one.
nature.
Yeah.
Energy is
Is
nature.
nature reality? Is nature
No,
real?
uh,
Nature's not real.
reality is something different than nature. I think reality is a perception. Real is nature, but reality is a perception. I think they're two separate things. There's two separate concepts.
That's hmm. But real is based on. I mean, reality is based on the word real.
It may be, but the existence of nature as an independent thing is my objective category.
And I want to meet you where you're at, rather. So I
Okay.
don't care. I just want to understand. So you're saying real life is different than reality itself,
Yes,
because what is real is just perceptual, whereas reality, in the way you're using the word, is pointing to that external world, right?
I think you just said the same thing twice. What is real is not necessarily perceptual. What is real is independent of us. If I say if a tree falls in the forest and makes a sound, doesn't make a sound if no one's there to hear it. My statement
Mhm.
here would say that the tree falls and makes a sound and doesn't require somebody to hear it. So I see
Mhm.
nature is real, the outside world is real, but our reality is our perception of it, which is different.
Mhm. And I would agree. I agree that there's an external world from us that we don't know about. Like we don't know about how many trees are falling around the world right now, but they're
Yeah,
falling. That's reality.
right.
I agree with that.
No, no, that's nature.
Reality
Reality
doesn't
includes your own
and that
circumstances. Reality, I believe, is
okay,
mixed
this
up
is
in
where
my.
I'm
Now, I may be wrong. I could
confused.
be wrong, but I could be totally wrong. But I'm currently understanding reality as my perception of my objective and subjective world, and it's my reality. It's no one else's reality.
Okay.
I see reality
Hmm.
as a very personal thing at this level,
So
but I
reality is
see
subjective.
it's a mix of my objective category and my subjective category. And yes, reality is subjective, but nature is not. Nature simply is.
I agree. And
Okay.
now do you still claim to know what the ontology of nature is?
Ontology is what again? I keep getting lost
Is
on
what
that
is
idea.
what it is.
Yes, it is. Yes,
Yeah, like
nature is ontologically
ontology.
true. Yeah, it's true. Nature is what it is.
Yeah.
Is that an
I
accurate
agree. But what is
ontological
it?
statement? It's energy.
Oh yeah, we definitely agree, and I think that would be it's energy. But what is energy? We're going to go on a loop again.
Yes,
It
we are.
sort of goes back into language, and this is it gets to where language and semantics get in the way. Um,
Yes.
and like I say, and I keep contending with you on it, and I'm only asking these questions to kind of point you to the fact that we agree. We actually don't
Yes, we do agree.
disagree.
Yes,
It
we
the only
agree.
Yeah, we agree. Absolutely. And the only reason it seems like we don't agree, as I keep thinking, is because of semantics. Because
I think you might be right.
our languages are you see, you got to understand, um dualism is a very embedded um philosophy within our language. And this can be misleading because we speak in dualistic terms all the time. And so when someone like me comes along and starts talking about non-dualism using dualistic language, it seems like I'm contradicting myself. And then people will easily make the argument that this non-dual stuff is just bullshit. This is why, you got to have souls versus bodies. And, this is, or religion is based on dualism. You know, this is where all that stuff came from. But actually, there's only one reality, there's only one experience for everybody, right? Epistemically, ontologically, we don't know. That's what I would say. But we agree on that. That's the thing we're both agreeing on. And that's all I really care about, is that we really agreed, regardless of the terms. And here's the other thing in your favor that I'll give you credit for too, Dave. I'm also a dualist. So I find most of the meaning in the world within a dualistic perspective, but I just don't take it beyond a perspective. Like, in other words, I'm out of work, right? Having a
Right.
job, these are two different concepts. Working and not working, these are two different concepts. Both are very real in my experience as I'm learning. They have consequences. When I'm out of work, there's real consequences. When I'm working, there are real consequences. So
Okay.
I agree with you. There
But
is
there's
a consequential feedback loop going on here.
okay. But I tend to say not. We don't all have one reality. I tend to say that we all have one existence.
Yeah, we have one existence, right? I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, okay. My concepts here. of subjective and objective lead me to a position where I see a infinite number of realities in my thinking. I have an infinite number of realities to deal with, and that number is, I mean, it's
Okay.
just bizarre. Yes, um, because I
Okay.
see
Can
it.
you describe that
Yeah.
just for the audience? And I'd like to hear more about that. Go right ahead.
Okay. Well, I see that the action of of where real philosophy, in my opinion, ought to be, and I can be totally wrong about this. I'm willing to discuss it, and I'm willing to be corrected. But I believe everything to be very dualistic because I see I see two categories. One category is my subjective, and the other is objective, and I see the conjunction between them to be an and. That and, or dualism, it also can be expressed as mind plus hunger, or mind plus the existence or nature, utilization of energy. And if I do that, I can describe a surface. I can describe a vector. And once I get done that, I
Hmm.
can say that each of us has this
Yep.
surface. Okay? Yeah. Okay. Each of us has a surface. Each of us has this vector. Each of us has this spark. And I can say that the same thing exists in every system that I look at. It's every system's interaction with the world around it has the same properties. And for my concept of divinity, I add them all together and I come up with what I call God. I think we all have a divine spark, and that divine spark sees the inside of that surface and of that interaction. And we
Right.
can only
I mean, this
understand
is
how it,
classic theism.
yeah,
Right. And
well,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I understand that that's kind of classic theism right there. And that's what I was saying is that a lot of our language comes from that sort of um tradition, you know?
yeah,
And that's
eh,
how
yeah,
language, at least the English language, I think most language of ideas, you know?
yes, I
And so it's
agree. Yeah,
understandable and it becomes very intuitive. And so when we start speaking of, yeah, and yeah, and so all of the, but even still, all of these identities, all of these separate identities, they all exist within the same structure. Is what is the blind spot? You know, it's kind of acts as a blind spot. You know, the mental life is a blind spot because we look at it as if it is the reality. Um, because the thing is, before we can even speak of objective facts, subjective feelings, my viewpoint, the external world, we always begin with experience itself, right? Experience is
yes,
immediate, it's undeniable, it's prior to all those sort of categories we're talking about here. So
yes,
I look at it as this is the ground, this is where we build, right? And so you experience colors, sounds, thoughts, feelings, perceptions, hunger. Then the mind will label some of them as internal and external, right?
yes,
And this is understandable because it's part of it's built into our language. Um, in a non-dual framework, for example, objective and subjective, they're not separate domains, they're just conceptual categories applied to that one experience. What we call objectivity is simply the intersubjective stability of certain like experiential patterns we see. And what we
I can see
call like
that.
this subjectivity, this subjective world, or what you call the reality, is just the private contour of others. So both arise within a single undivided field of awareness. Is called objectivity. So this objective subjective divide sort of dissolves not into chaos, but it dissolves into this non-dual experience expressed intersubjectively. It's just that simple. It's not really that complicated.
That intersubjective non-dualism that you're talking about, um, yes, I can see what you're saying. Um, the difficulty I have had is that I see the concept of monism applied in such a way that people either behave objectively or subjectively because they don't say they're both, even though we have in this conversation. In this conversation, we have said they're both. So uh, we agree. My difficulty in this world deals with the fact that that a lot of people think in purely objective terms or subjective terms, denying that the other exists, and that can be said if one says everything is created in the mind. That's what I am basically
Hmm.
arguing with. I'm saying not everything's created in the mind, but some things are created in the mind.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I enjoy both.
You're, can you repeat that, the last part? Yeah, repeat that one more time because I broke up my stupid connection. Say that one more time. The
Okay,
last part.
okay. I say that the world is not objective or subjective. It is both. So I both have in my mind a how do I say it again? um, oh, let's see. I
You
experience
had it right
both.
the
I
first time.
experience yeah. I experience both. I have an
Yes,
experienced world that
yes, yes. Okay.
I experience a subjective world. I have them both. So there's some things that are purely in my mind, and there's some things that I have intersubjectively categorized as objective. I guess I have to say it that kind of way. Would that make sense? So I have both.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree. I agree, man. That's, and I think we had talked about that too. That's a really good point to bring up too. And oh, one good question. I know you may not be. So it says, "Hey Scott, if there is nothing more than I, how come I don't know many things in the universe and the whole universe?" That's a really good question. And the thing about that is that non-dualism does not really claim that you should perceive everything. Instead, what it's claiming is that there is one awareness, but it expresses itself through different perspectives, right? So, like, one sun will cast many shadows, or one ocean creates many waves, as the non-dualist will say. One screen on your computer can display many windows. So awareness really manifests perspectively, or is that a word? Perspectival partitions? I don't know, something like that. Like through lenses, localizations, point of views, you could say frameworks like what we're talking about. So our experience is really local to each person, not because consciousness is fractured, but because it contains itself to experience reality from one angle at a time. And this is even true on materialism. Everybody sort of agrees on that, right? And so a non-dualist would be no different in that respect. It's just that consciousness forms distinctions within itself to allow for those experiences. So without distinctions, though, you can have no objects, no self, no perceptions, no meaning, no experience. And that's what I'm agreeing with Dave about. Like, both of these things are very important. Um, so it's very useful, it's simplified, it's survival optimized. It's kind of like the computer file icon would hide the complexity of the underlying circuitry, but you have different folders that mean different things. They're representative, of that. So you don't see the universe, you see the interface that your consciousness uses to make that interaction possible. So there's a privacy of experience. It's a feature of the model, not evidence against non-dualism. So, you know, I'm going to agree. You have private experiential streams of consciousness. You have separate vantage points. This is part of the rule structure of manifested consciousness, right? We, it's sort of tempting to kind of play science fiction and say, well, yeah, if everything's non-dual, I should have access to everything. But that's an assumption. That's not necessarily follows from anything non-dualism would say. And intersubjective agreement, like we were talking about, shows that we really share one reality just from distinct angles. So, we can communicate, predict shit, share shit. We live in a world because our viewpoints will overlap. So yeah, I don't disagree with that. We share one field, but the field is just partitioned. That's all.
Now, can I add something here that you may not like? Please.
Sure, go ahead.
I find that in a world in which people can actually use the conjunction or between subjective and objective, I find it to be dangerous. I find that people who become seriously objective and disregard the subjective become very
Mm,
greedy. And I also find the people who are
mm,
very subjective and not objective are usually very giving and usually are looking for something beyond life, but not paying close attention to life. And overall, I see a great schism in the quality of life for many, many people and the quality of our future. So I wonder, is it a good thing or a bad thing to say that our world is really just subjective and intersubjective is all we really know? If we say that,
well,
then we are giving
hmm
credence to the or between subject and objective. But if we say subjective and objective, then we can have a mix and can show that not only do we each have our own reality and have our own consciousness, but we all get hungry. So
right.
I'm
Well, this
trying to
this
suggest
I
here.
understand. So I understand, but I think what it is you just haven't digested what I was just outlining just now. For the
Oh
last
yeah, yeah,
few minutes, I was outlining the resolution to that, and you just haven't digested it yet. So you're still kind of
you're
going
right.
off
Yeah.
this other thing. So I won't even really try to address it, but I will say that I understand where you're coming from, because that goes back to the whole premise of natural or not natural theism, but classic theism. The creator creation distinction, which fed into the idea that you have the body, you have the soul. These two things compete. You have the light, the darkness. You have this duality. Therefore, Jesus comes along and says, when we see a poor person, let's feel compassion. Let's fight for the good side, the light, right? And so
Yes.
you have this idea that instead of praying for the poor person, don't just give them the shirt off your back, give them your pants too. So this is all really rooted in that sort of tradition. I understand that, and it makes a lot of sense. I get it. But like I was saying, the thing is that you can also spin that on his head. If you would never starve yourself, you would never kill yourself unless you were mentally unstable. In normal situations, you would never do yourself wrong, because you would be hurting yourself, right? People generally want to do good to themselves because it increases goodness to their experience, right? Well, if we look at others as ourselves, if we can look at each other in a non-dual lens or perspective to some degree, then we can be more compassionate. We can play off this sort of dual category of appearance into a more compassionate, empathetic sort of way of living, because you see the other as yourself. It's almost like, I can't stand to see my child be hurt. I would rather I hurt than my child be hurt, because I view my child as part of me. Well, how great would it be if everyone looked at each other that way?
That would be wonderful. So I think what I'm hearing you say is the non-dual point of view is the value of the group. We are is the value of the group rather than the value of only self. Is that true?
Mhm.
Yeah. Hello. Are you there?
And I think you make a good point when you when you say taking things passion. But if we're totally monistic, then you can say the only thing that really matters is my experience because I'm therefore a solipsist. That's the ultimate monism, right?
Right.
And so you have to sort of take each category. That this is the beauty of non-dualism. You're taking all of these categories seriously. You're just funneling them into one experience, one meaningful experience. Because look, if 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 you feeding the poor or helping people um had no repercussions on your personal experience, you would lack value. There would be no value. There'd be no motivation to do it in the first place. You do it from a deep sense of morality, a subjective sort of feeling that you get from doing good to others, right? So there has to be, you have to take that dualism serious. You have to take your experience of that dualism serious. That's the engine to the meaning. But the non-dualism is sort of the overall, the root, the foundation of it all, because all of that stuff happens within your experience, all of it. That's where the meaning happens. So there is no outside mind that you can refer to, this God mind or whatever you want to say. There isn't this thing that you're in touch with, like this ontology. Otherwise, it really wouldn't be, it wouldn't have the same meaning, I would say. There has to be some subjective element to your morality or your behavior, because otherwise, why would you do anything? Because of some authority in heaven or something, or because you don't want to, like if it's just about your survival, then it lacks the deeper meaning that you get from that dualistic sort of idea. But it also gets a lot of meaning from that non-dualistic thing, where it's more personal. It's more,
Can,
you know, centered on your experience.
may I add something to that? Because I agree with everything you just said. I
Yeah.
absolutely agree with everything you said. But I also see the evolutionary characteristics pointed out by Dr. Sapolsky of tournament and compassion. And I see
Hmm.
that also becomes unitary. So if you're in a tournament mode all the time, you're always fighting for yourself. You always have to be the winner. There's literally a sign in a restaurant here for kids across the street from the high school, which literally says, if you're not the winner, then you're the
Oh
loser.
Lord.
Okay, literally is what it says.
Say that one more
And
time.
if you're not the winner, you are the loser. Okay, that's what it says, and it makes
Hmm.
these
Right,
jocks
right,
like this
right, right, right. Exactly.
very competitive, very competitive. But in a cooperative world, we work together. We work together as we can, and because of that, we can do that sharing that you're talking about, that group thing, that non-dualism, where we all come together. Now, where I'm heading here right for a moment
Right, right.
is they're both realities, one reality in my head and then the reality of the group. So can I say that my mind is the seat of my observer, and can I say our mind is the seat of our observer? Your mind is the seat of your observer. Can I say that reasonably?
Hmm. 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 That field
Okay,
of
so if I,
awareness. Yeah. That objective field of awareness. Yep.
yeah, and I don't understand the other realities. I can point at it, I can get some characteristics from it, but can't each one of those things have its own degree of consciousness or not? Perhaps.
I would say they do. Like I was mentioning before, it's partitioned, and that's definitely true. Even within your own being, you have different streams of consciousness going on at all times.
Yeah. And can I also say that that
So
group
I agree, and
has its own hunger? That group not only has its own consciousness, but it also has its own
yeah,
hunger
of
and
course.
its own set of needs. Okay, and can do its own thing, can do something for another group.
That's what consciousness is, right? That's the whole
Okay,
point of consciousness. That's what consciousness is. It's that experience of hunger. It's that experience of all that stuff. Like, you can, like how people, use the tournament of compassion. Like they usually say, like in standard evolutionary discourse, they'll say like life is framed as competition, where organisms win by outcompeting others, like you were talking about, right? And
As
like on
tournament,
non-dualism, like it can be reversed. You can reverse that idea. You can turn it into a
cooperation.
tournament of compassion, which is like individuals, yeah, yeah, cooperations, not dominance, care, connection, reciprocity, all that good stuff. And that's really sort of seen objectively when you look at fitness. Like you can measure fitness and the capacity to harmonize with others. Like it doesn't it decreases entropy, because there's more order in a society, like a system, like a society or something like that. So, in like that developmental process, like you were talking about, that intersubjectivity,
Yeah,
consciousness there is co-created. So self-other interactions sort of sculpt the structure of everyone's experience. So compassion sort of
yeah,
strengthens and refines that dynamic. So a tournament, like you said, of compassion is sort of like an ongoing mutual shaping of reality through empathetic engagement, right? So I
yes,
agree with you that there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that supports what I'm kind of driving at, that
yes, it
non-dualism
does.
can actually go deeper. It can go deeper
To large groups. It can go to
and and,
very
and be
large groups.
more. Yeah, yeah,
It
absolutely. And
can,
that's the whole point of this whole channel. Like what I always try to do is I try to come up with different ways to promote non-dualism. So that's why you see me putting up all kinds of science stuff, and in biology or in cosmology or in quantum
excellent.
mechanics or in philosophy of mind. And the point isn't really to get you to believe any one model is the truth, as I keep on saying. The whole point is to just say, look, there's a convergent of ideas out there within academia and within philosophy, science, all that stuff that sort of converge on compassion, cooperation, non-dualism. That's the whole point. That's why I like to have people of different opinions, like say theists. Like I'm not a theist, right? So I have like Christians, like people who believe in God or in one form or the other, and we talk about these things openly. But I'm trying to show that even when people that have these different viewpoints, we can still have nice conversations, progressive conversations, and we can all sort of agree on some core things at the end of the day, which is compassion, and maybe move them towards a more non-dualistic kind of underpinning to it all. Even if you're a dualist, that's fine. Because I really think the issue is that we all really agree with each other. It's just that our language has confused us. That's all.
I agree with you completely. I would simply add, and hunger. So we all have the compassion. We all have the same kinds of thoughts. We can have the same kinds of abstractions within our minds. We can have the same general goals. And the compassion, though, has to touch on we all get hungry. That's all
Yeah,
I'm adding.
we all get hungry. Absolutely. I
Yeah,
agree with you, man. So you're kind of
that's
so I
it.
guess we can kind of end it with we're both kind of both then, right? We agree that we're
The,
both dualist and non-dualist in many perspectives, right?
well, I want to thank you before we end. I want to thank you very much for
Yeah.
for doing this with me because I have a much clearer understanding of non-dualism because I have always been a little confused by that. I'm going, what is non-dualism? Is it simply really close dualism, or is it monism, or what? And what you're telling me now, what I'm hearing
Yeah.
from you now, is that non-dualism is the collection of all of us. It is the conglomeration. It is the grouping that we get eventually where the whole planet is one. All of us are one,
Perfect, man. Damn it,
and I'm
Dave. You
seeing
said
that
it
now.
perfect. Why can't I ever say things so good? Why don't you write this stuff down and send it to me so I can put it in my mantras and stuff?
Yeah, but I can say
That's
the same thing
beautiful,
about you
man. I,
just
I
now.
love that.
I, that's what you just taught me.
Yeah.
That's what you just taught me, and I want to thank you very, very much for that. Okay, I just want to say thank you
Wonderful,
very,
Dave,
very much
man.
for that.
You are very welcome,
Yeah.
man. I love you, Dave. And I love all you guys out there in the audience, man. And you guys have a good one. I hope this was really fun. Like and subscribe so we can learn more about non-duality and duality. We'll talk to you guys later on. Peace.
Thank you. Bye bye.